I, 30F, have been married to my husband, 45 meters, for 5 years, and together for 8. Obviously we have an age gap in our relationship, and whenever we discussed possible health issues or medical care, it was regarding him. About 4 months ago, I was in a car accident. I was talking on Bluetooth to my husband, because I was nervous driving on the icy roads going to our house, when another car rounded a corner too fast and lost control. It was one of those exact wrong moment things and my car went off the road, and into a tree. My husband heard the whole thing and my last memory, before I lost consciousness, was him screaming my name. I don't want to get into the bloody details, but I ended up being in the hospital for over a month. I needed multiple surgeries, and have been in physical therapy ever since. I'm finally getting to a point where I feel like myself again, and I'm no longer in pain. I've gained back some weight, and look good, if I do say so myself. My husband literally worked out of my hospital room for the entire time I was there. He went home to shower, sleep and look after the dogs, then came right back. He attended all my therapy appointments, so he would know how to better help me recover at home. He was amazing and everything I could ask him to be in that kind of horrible situation. I love him so much, and so yesterday while shopping, I saw this gorgeous black lingerie set, and decided to surprise him. We haven't had sex since before the accident, and every time I try, it feels like he makes an excuse or expresses some concern about some random body part of mine that is no longer injured. He was on his laptop in bed when I came in wearing my new purchases, and I could tell he was taken by surprise. I basically crawled into his lap and started kissing his neck and grinding on him. He was definitely hard, but then he lost it and pushed me away, saying that we shouldn't rush this and he doesn't want to jeopardize my recovery with sex. I was crying by the time he ended the sentence and said I'm fine. The doctors say sex is fine. But he was already walking into the bathroom and turning on the shower. I don't know what to think. Is it the scars? Is the memory of me in a hospital bed unable to even sit up by myself repelling him? I finally am starting to feel good about myself and my body again, and the fact that he won't touch me is really hurting my mental health. It's probably a long shot, but has anyone else experienced this? TL. Doctor, I was in a major car accident, and I'm finally back to myself, but my husband doesn't want to have sex with me. I don't think he doesn't find you attractive anymore. I don't think it's the scars. I think he's just shook to the core by the whole thing and scared of hurting you. Talk to him about it. Tell him you'd understand if the trauma of the accident makes it hard for him to get in the mood. I'd just give him a bit of time to recenter. Tell him it might help him to talk to a therapist. He should definitely get help for this. His own therapy and then couples counseling. Thank you everyone for your kind comments. I think I realized that just because I physically feel better, it doesn't mean our lives can magically go back to normal, which was basically what I was trying to do. We both went through a major trauma, and pretending it didn't happen will only be damaging to both of us. I can't say how much I love this man. He is my whole world, and the thought that he has been hurting, but trying to protect me from it by staying silent makes me feel sick. The bottom line is we both need to go to therapy to unpack everything that happened and develop some healthy coping mechanisms. Another part of this was we were trying for a baby before the accident, and I was excited to get back to it. Much love to everyone who commented. Maybe that's another conversation you need to have. Maybe he's a bit anxious to TTC after your accident. Best of luck to you guys with your recovery and baby journey. I like all the counseling suggestions and agree it's warranted. You've both been so much, but in the meantime, please don't take his refusal as the rejection it must have felt like. He's dealing with how he almost lost you when that age gap had previously protected him from having to do that. Mortality and reality and everything he probably thought was sorted out came unraveled. You both sound like lovely people, and I'm so glad you're doing so well. Great point about how maybe he thought the age gap would mean he would be the one to go first, and probably hasn't ever considered that he could lose her too. He's probably finding the switch back from caregiver to partner difficult. Gonna take a therapist to sort that one out. I was afraid of that. I was hoping seeing his wife in black lace would be enough to flip the switch back, but apparently not. This is a multifaceted problem. You know your physical state and are ready to go. He doesn't. He heard the women he loves have a horrific accident. The whole thing played out like a nightmare. The last thing you heard was him screaming your name, but you have no idea what he heard after you were unconscious. He heard that and could do nothing. He saw you broken in the hospital and could do nothing. He saw you in pain going through physical therapy and could do nothing. He was in crisis mode living with you in the hospital and could do nothing. You get where his head is at? So to have you come in the bedroom and lingerie raring to go is a bit of a leap. He has to wrap his head around that. I will guarantee you, he is still in crisis mode. You couldn't drive a straight pin up his asterisk with a 5-pound hammer. This is not meant in any way to assign any blame on you. Like I said, you know how you feel and he doesn't. So you're going to have to employ that communication thing and gently express how you feel and what you want. And a little outside assistance from a good therapist certainly couldn't hurt. I bet that he is dealing with a bit of PTSD. Dealing with the news that a loved one has been in a life-threatening accident is terrifying, but he had to helplessly listen in on the accident as it happened. I bet he hasn't processed this completely, and it could definitely be interrupting his ability to be sexually intimate. A person who sees their loved one seriously injured can be traumatized. He heard the accident on the phone, rushed to the hospital, and saw his wife mangled and broken. I'm sure there were moments he thought you wouldn't make it. Opus. I highly recommend sitting down with him and your doctor for a conversation about sex post-convalescence. Also, consider seeing a counselor. It was a traumatic event for both of you. The time for just trying to start having sex is over. You need to sit down and have a conversation with him. What is going on in his head? If he's been with you at these appointments, I assume he's heard the doctors say sex is fine. Why doesn't he believe that after hearing a doctor say it? Tell him you are feeling so much better and are so excited about having your body back and that you want to have sex and have that part of your relationship back, and see what he says. I think it's very unlikely that something about your body post-accident is actually turning him off. Ultimately, I agree with the others that the most likely explanation is that this has been super traumatic for him as well, and you guys will need to go to therapy, but you might as well talk to him about it first. I also lost my wife during the birth of our child. I was scared to death to even breathe on her for 6 months. I would lay awake all night and just listen to her breathe. I believe that it affected me more than did her. I still cry when I think about that night more than 19 years ago. When your husband goes through almost losing you, it does things mentally to them that we do not understand. I had a hysterectomy go wrong in 2012. The last thing I said to my family before my life-saving surgery was things like, "Do you know our bank info? Do you know where the life insurance is?" Things like that. Right before I passed out. My husband walked the hospital grounds millions of times a month I was in the hospital. He learned how to unhook my G-tube to help me go to the bathroom. He held my hand night I was on too much pain meds, I was hallucinating. All of these things and the horror they caused him, he held in as to not upset me. He watched the love of his life almost die, and it messed him up for a long time. We made it through it, and you will too. Get you guys some therapy, and talk to each other. It's a very hard thing to process. The two of you need to get to trauma counseling immediately. It took my husband months to feel okay with sex after I almost died. He was also severely traumatized by what happened, and he was afraid to try anything because of it. Do you mind if I ask what to expect in that kind of counseling? I've been thinking about it, but to be honest I don't like talking about the accident. The poor guy's definitely traumatized. In those last few moments on the phone, he thought that he was hearing you die. That would mess up anyone. He probably has PTSD from this. You should both attend therapy *TOGETHER*. He's probably also terrified at the thought of potentially injuring you during sex somehow. I was really touched by the story of how your husband cared for you during your recovery. Clearly you have a very loving relationship. What strikes me most about the events you described is that you waited until you were ready for sex again and then surprised your husband with this information. That doesn't seem quite fair, does it? Maybe examine your expectations on male sexuality. Do you expect a man to be ready, physically and or emotionally, for sex at all times? For many if not most men, that is not the case. I suggest going to your husband, expressing gratitude that he was so understanding during your recuperation, saying that you're really looking forward to bringing sex back into your relationship, and asking him how and when he'd like to do it. Is there an especially good time or way? Then just please be a little patient with him on this. My guess is that the amount of time he will need to acclimate will be hours or days, not weeks or months. If it takes much longer than that, couples therapy is something to consider. Good luck, and congratulations again on your strong relationship. I suspect that he's scared of hurting you. It's hard when you see someone you love broken. Your instinct is to make their lives easier. He probably needs counseling himself. Does the hospital have a support group? Having helped family through long recoveries, there are many normal issues he could be dealing with. Does he have a therapist? He is also recovering from trauma as the spouse of a survivor. That's a good idea. I actually hadn't even thought to ask, but it's a big hospital, so I bet they do. You guys absolutely need couples counseling, because I couldn't imagine going back to normal after helplessly listening to your loved one endure a fatal car crash. Just the thought of it alone makes me want to tear up. You might be done with physical therapy, but there's clearly a need for emotional therapy. He needs trauma therapy. This is a trauma response, not an I'm unattracted to my wife response. He likely has PTSD. You both would benefit from therapy to address the trauma. Let's not forget, your husband was on the phone with you when this happened. He heard you, any screaming, the sounds of the accident, and was completely unable to help. Then he has had to watch you recover from this, being unable to move, surgeries, therapy and the lot. He probably still has a lot of healing to do as well. And I understand you not wanting to go to therapy, but maybe he can go by himself. He clearly has a lot he needs to recover from. Edit to at, I'm not downplaying what you went through, or any trauma you have from this. I was solely focusing on your husband here. You've gotten really good advice, for the most part, so far. I don't think it has anything to do with your appearance, or that he doesn't find you attractive, or that he's taken on the carer role, and can't see you romantically, or whatever. He clearly loves you, or he wouldn't have been so present during your recovery and he wouldn't be clingy now. Sometimes it's easy to forget the emotional recovery is just as important as physical recovery. If someone breaks a shoulder, you don't just put it in a cast and then cut it off in a few months and expect to be back exactly where you were before it was broken. The same concept applies to emotional and mental recovery. You guys went through a trauma. It's both physical and mental. Another way to think about it could be this. It sounds like you are grateful that he was there for you and helped you through the physical recovery from the accident. Maybe this could be your way of expressing that by helping him through the emotional recovery. It seems like you keep trying to initiate sex and he keeps turning you down. Directly or indirectly, have you tried just talking to him? Not when you initiate or want to initiate sex, not while anything else is going on, just sitting, preferably out of bed, and talking. Start out by saying you want to discuss the physical part of your relationship. Don't tell him how he feels. It seems like you don't want to have sex with me. Be open about your own feelings. I would like to be physical with you again. Give him space to talk to you about his reservations. As others suggest, this might take a counselor, but you need to start talking. We don't know what's going on with him. You need to talk to him about it. Since emotions are already high, it might be a good idea to open discussions with a sex-positive couples counselor. And yeah, you need to search specifically for a sex-positive therapist to find someone who'll be sex-positive. Please seek counseling for your dear hubby. He obviously loves you. Basically living at the hospital with you proves that. But as others have said, he probably was traumatized by listening to the accident, then being helpless as you took on your recovery. Try not to be hurt. It's obviously the last thing he wants to do is hurt you. Talk to him about it. Don't try to guess how he is feeling or thinking. At one point he said he wasn't ready. Ask him about this. You both need to heal from this, and only open communication will bring you both to an understanding about what you think and feel. Have you ever gotten into a conversation and discovered how you feel or what you think before you were perplexed? Just keep communicating and things will sort themselves out. With how attentive he was when you were in the hospital, I don't think you need to worry about him losing interest. I think he's probably still mentally recovering, helping you through it. I would suggest counseling for both of you. He's probably scared to hurt you since you went through so much. Probably the event was traumatic to him too, and it may take time to get things back the way they were. Just talk to him. Look for help in therapy as needed.